Deep Dive with David Stendahl, where we trade without ego, no emotion, no greed, and no opinion. Before we begin tonight's video blog, please read over our trading disclaimer and remember to trade smart and accept the reality that trading futures is risky. This presentation does not provide buy-sell recommendations, and our information is strictly provided for educational purposes only. As always, trade at your own risk and analysis. Hey there, it's David Stendahl with tonight's Deep Dive. It is July 3rd, 2019. We'll look at live cattle, ETF being COWB. And the reason we're looking at this is because we're in kind of barbecue season, and so there's an opportunity to be had here. Now, we're setting up for this potential move because the market is right now in a little consolidation phase, as noted by this little sideways arrow pattern. But the problem is that the trends are still to the downside. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this just to show you that things are slowing on the downside and that this consolidation that we're under actually could turn out to be halfway decent. Give you some key levels to watch though. Right now, the technicals are still negative, and we've got nothing else that's really showing up here as far as overbought or oversold, and that's in part because it happened a little while ago. Just to point out here, the seasonals obviously are blank here, but what I do want to show, and the reason that it's blank is it's not even listed on the top 10 as far as a market that you should be watching the seasonals from that perspective. However, that's not to say that we can't look at the seasonal, just get a feel for what could be happening, and it's the opportunity that's going to be popping up here. So what we're looking at here are three separate charts. We got the 5, the 10, and the 15. Blue represents the 5, the red is the 10-year, the green is the 15-year. I just want to point out that here's the beginning of July, which is obviously the phase we're in right now, but call it mid-July, maybe another week or so, in all cases on all of these different charts, we typically start to see a little bit of a bounce. So the opportunity that we're looking for, there could be a couple of head fakes in between here, but I do want you to look at things from the long side because this really is a quite good market to trade. Maybe not from the most liquid markets, but still a very good market to trade. And there's opportunity to be had here in the coming week, 10 days or so. If we take a look at the long-term trend to the market, our long-term, we're looking at the depth gauge here, and you can see that the blue represents kind of an average, a long-term average of our underwater volume index representation here, and this particular black line, you can see that it has been selling off, and now it's in this little consolidation here with this red area or this black area. Well, it doesn't always, you can't just look at that and say, okay, well, the market's going to rally from there. But what you can do is you can look at the signal net change. I'll show you where you can find this. You come to charts, depth gauge, and then depth gauge change. And what this is doing is it's looking at basically the past week for the depth gauge and just trying to get a feel for, are things accelerating, are they basing, what's taking place. And you can see that cattle and hogs are on the right hand side, so they're increasing, decreasing from the perspective that they're not falling as fast as they were, and they're beginning to show signs that they're going to have some type of reversal. So anytime you have a positive on that side, it means that things are changing or that there's a continuation of that trend. I just showed you that the trend was to the downside, but of all the markets we track, and you can see there's quite a few of them, hogs and cattle are ones that are showing some positive reversal opportunity is probably the best way I can express that. Let's take a look at the market itself, and you'll get a feel for what's taking place here. So here's cattle, daily bars here. Just recently we had some nice some support to the market that was tested through here, and it did survive. And if it is gonna fall again, well, it'll come down to potentially that particular level, call it the 102 level ish, right through here. And we should see maybe a little bit of a bounce and reversal from the 50-day, which is what this yellow line is. But I do believe that bounce that we're looking for, as I showed with the seasonal tendencies, will be coming. So this is setting things up. Now you can see the consolidation that I pointed out or talked about before, that this consolidation is actually quite good. We want to see a little consolidation before we have some type of a rally. The other thing that we're showing here on the daily bars is we've been showing these wave low indicators, alerts, and it keeps trying to find a low to the market. So the most recent one came right through here. Now we've had some failed ones as well. You don't always take the first one under conditions where the market is really beginning to trend, but in this particular case we have had a few where it's trying to show some type of a base, and the most recent one occurred back here on the 24th of last month. So that little rally, if you want to call it that, little bit of a bounce to the market, is probably a better way to phrase it, is in fact starting to show a little bit of strength. That's why I showed that depth gauge level change, because it is actually showing the fact that the market is in a consolidation. It's trying to hammer out some type of a base, and this is where opportunities will obviously come from. If we look at things on a weekly bar basis, so each of this is a weekly, you can see that the elastic level, overbought, oversold type alert, you can see that it's been hammering out on a weekly bar basis a base as well. So we're seeing it both in the weeklies and on the dailies. There are different levels. Things aren't as strong right now here, but we are basing at least a little bit on the weeklies. I'll feel a little more comfortable when we get a wave low that it triggers, like this little blue dot here. Once we get one of those blue dots, which will probably be coming up here fairly soon, then we might potentially get that rally, little tradable opportunity is probably a better way to phrase it, here in the coming week, 10 days or so. So it is a market that we do definitely want to be looking at. Now, where the systems are right now, it triggered a long yesterday, so we are able to capture the move that took place today, and then we are already long back on the 26th. So we've got two open positions, a daily bar and a 240 minute bar system, and what they're looking for is this basing that I'm talking about. Hopefully there'll be a bit of a bounce to the market, and in that particular case we can either take some profits or let things kind of rally and take advantage of that movement that we're looking at least through and into July. And that basing that we're looking at right now is the opportunity that obviously we're talking about right now. So if you don't trade the meats, whether it's hogs or cattle, do take a look at those markets, because they certainly are very good markets. They really are receptive to technical analyses from the perspective of systems. They have a high grade system. I've talked about the grading of the markets, and specifically cattle and hogs are definitely one of the top markets to actually trade from a systematic approach. So something to at least consider from that side. And with that, we will take a look at some other things in the coming week or so. I'm actually working on a webinar series where we're going to go through in some depth a lot of our analytical tools and really get into them in greater detail. And what I've got planned is a potential 14 separate webinars. They build upon themselves. How do they react, and how do these indicators interpret together to give you and paint a picture for what the market is doing? And I try to talk about some of these indicators in some detail, but in this webinar series that I've got planned, we'll go into a lot more detail, and hopefully some of the terminology that I use will become a little more clear. I'm not really trying to use the jargon. It's just information just terminology that I've used for years and years. And so I'm going to try to clarify some of that, do some live webinars where we can actually go into some detail. And from that perspective, we've got something planned I think hopefully you'll enjoy, and we'll try to get into that here in the coming maybe 10 days or so. I should begin that particular process, meaning that we'll start to do some of those webinars. So with that, we will touch base, and we'll look at some new markets very soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.